Welcome to Bridging Borders, the podcast where we try to bridge the gap between cultures through insightful conversations.
Together, we explore diverse topics from productivity to language learning, all the while helping you improve your English skills.
Hey Veronica, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. I'm very excited for today's topic because today we're going to be talking about growing up in the UK versus growing up in Russia because I'm from Russia and there's so many amazing things I can share with you guys, with all of you listening. And yeah, so let's jump right in.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited too. So the first thing I wanted to know about was what's the usual setup for parents and children before they actually start going to school? So before in the UK you start going to school at the age of 5. So what is usually the setup for parents and children between birth and 5 years old, I guess?
Yeah, this is very interesting because I think right now maybe it's changing a little bit because more and more people feel okay with getting nannies or like getting help. And I think more and more people actually can afford that because before that in the Soviet Union, I think it was a lot more difficult. And plus, it was not even popular at all because there was a very strong notion that you're a parent or especially you're a mom, so you have to like do everything yourself. And now fortunately it is changing a little bit, so there's not that much pressure. I would say that normally kids go to kindergarten or like kind of a sort of childcare before they go to school because a lot of parents right now work, and it is absolutely normal for both mom and dad to work. And I would say usually kids go to kindergarten from like 8 a.m. up until 5 or 6 p.m. So it's a lot of time. And obviously, that gives a lot of time to the kids' parents to work and do other things, which is nice. I would say it's also very popular for grandparents to help when it comes to raising children, especially if you have grandparents, if you have a very good relationship with your parents. I would say as an adult, as a parent, if you have a very good relationship with your parents, of course your parents are going to help you because usually your parents are gonna, I don't want to say pressure you. In some families, unfortunately, it is pressure, but they usually start saying, okay, when are you gonna have kids? You're already married, it's time to have kids, chop chop. You're so young. So yeah, so that's very interesting. And I would say kids normally start going to school at the age of 6 or 7 or 8. Yeah, it's kind
8?
of
Really?
8. Sometimes it is 8. Yeah, it depends on the
So no
family.
so no education before 8 sometimes.
It's just kindergarten, but like they give you
Mm,
education, or preschool. I would say it's like
yeah.
preschool, kindergarten. There is a form of education, but it's not like not formal education. Like formal education starts with grade first, and it's usually like you're 6, 7, or 8. I went to school when I was 6 because my parents thought I was ready. And I think I was so small. Like I was very little and I was so afraid. Like I still remember my very first day. We lived back in the north of Russia. And I remember I was so scared. I was like, oh no, I'm going to go to school. And in Russia, you also have to bring flowers. The school year
Again,
starts
flowers.
again. Yeah. The school year starts on September 1st. So it's just a very big, like important, I wouldn't say national holiday that we have in Russia, September 1st. Everyone goes to school and you're dressed up nicely, you're wearing a uniform, you have flowers for your teacher, and this is how we start the school year.
Wow, you Russians love flowers.
We really do. How is it in the UK?
Well, I think, yeah, most people go to, we call it a nursery. So I think in America they call it
Mm.
kindergarten. I think
Oh,
that's right.
preschool. I would say
Or
preschool
preschool.
too.
Yeah,
Hmm.
we call it a nursery. But I think a lot of parents now can't actually afford to go to send their kids to
Yes.
nursery because it's so expensive in the UK, and it's one of the big reasons why people are more hesitant to have children, or they don't want to have children because yeah, childcare costs are so expensive in terms of sending them to a nursery. So I think some, if they're lucky enough, go to nursery. I'm sure some grandparents play a role, but we don't really have that expectation. So for my
Mhm.
family, me and my sister used to go around to my grandma and grandpa's on a Friday, and that was it. we didn't go, and I don't think they did that much else apart from maybe in the summer holiday. Maybe we'd go once a week because they live quite close, fortunately. But we don't really. Maybe in some families it's very different. Maybe due to because they need to rely on grandparents, but we don't really have that tradition of grandparents having like a really active role in raising the children. I know they do in Spain, for example. Like the grandparents would often pick them up from school every single day, which is
Same thing in Russia.
really nice, but like a lot of responsibility for the grandparents. Like they've just worked for a very long time. They're probably retired and they're thinking, okay, I get to relax now. And nope, you gotta you gotta be at the school at 3 p.m. every day, or 5 p.m. in Spain. But yeah, so um, I also went to a childminder, which
What
which
is
is a
that?
bit of a it's yeah, it's just like most of the time it's a lady. I think people, yeah, most of the time it's a lady, and they just look after children. So it was just some
Okay.
woman's house. Just I guess her business was looking after children in the day, and yeah, me and my sister and loads of other children. I don't know how many there would be, to be honest. I can't remember
It's like a
going, but
babysitter.
yeah, it's like a babysitter, but you all go around to their house, and there's like I don't know what the maximum like capacity was of like how many children she would have in one day, but yeah, we'd go there and she would look after us essentially. So I think that's the case, but I've read quite a few articles now that some it's actually kind of cheaper for one of the parents not to work and just stay at home the entire time and look after the children rather than paying childcare costs. So that's how expensive it is in the UK. But what I wanted to ask you was how long the maternity leave is in Russia, because I think I'm right in saying that it can be up to 3 years. So the mum before pregnancy and after pregnancy can have 3 years off work per child, which is a long time.
Yes, it is absolutely true. Yeah, usually it's up to 3 years. And for a lot of women, it's something that they love about this like childcare system in Russia. Obviously, if you have a very long maternity leave, it allows you to, to kind of spend enough time with the baby and recover after everything and make sure you spend enough time taking care of your health, of again, your newborn. I would say most women probably don't actually spend 3 years not working because it's a very long time. And unfortunately, if you spend 3 years with a baby and then you go back to work, you probably lost a lot of your skills. So it's probably going to be a little bit harder for you to get back and start working. And a lot of women, if they decide to take this super long maternity leave, they just never go back to work, or it takes them a very long time to go back to work. It is also very normal like that in Russia. A family, like some women don't work at all. They give birth to a child and then that's it. Or maybe the first child they still can work, the second, or if they want to have a lot of kids, at some point they stop working. Some families do that. Again, I think it's because, as you just said, we have the same thing in Russia too. For a lot of people, they can't afford a babysitter. They can't afford to send their kid to a nice private kindergarten because usually a lot of people who can afford that, they would do that. We have state sponsored childcare like preschool, right? That is completely free for everyone. You can send your kid there. It's going to be okay. The problem with those places is that there's so many kids there, like 20 plus kids in one group, and it is so freaking hard for teachers to actually manage all of them. So that's why a lot of parents choose private preschool, and that can be very expensive and not a lot of people can afford that, obviously. So I would say usually women probably take a month or two and then they go back to work.
Only 2 months?
Yeah. Yeah, because they have to go back to work and they can
Yeah.
afford
Wow.
to yeah, spend more time. And as I said, because a lot of grandparents actually want to help. It's not like it's interesting for me because you said that like, oh, in the UK probably grandparents are going to be like, no, I don't actually want to do that. But in Russia, they want to do that. That's the thing. Like they retire and they look forward to spending time with their grandkids. So that's why for them it's exciting. They're like, "Yes, give me your kids. I'm going to not raise them." They don't treat it as raising them. They just think it's an amazing bonding opportunity. So it's a little bit different, like the way parents parent their kids and the way grandparents, I would say, just spend time with their grandkids. Because usually they're very kind, they let you do whatever you, you want to. So that's why I remember as a kid, I loved spending time with my grandparents because it was always like, I want a candy. Okay, here's your candy. I want to watch a cartoon. Okay, go watch it. My parents were not like that.
Yeah, that's great. So do you think it's a good thing that they have 3 years, like as an option, or do you think that kind of might prevent more equality between men and women in the workforce? Because if there is kind of that expectation for women to do the childcare and take more time off work, then obviously if you take 3 years off work, that's going to kind of slow your progress down in your career. So do you think it's a good thing?
Well, I would say that having this option is a good thing because if your company says, yes, for sure, like you can take 3 years off and we're going to still give you a job after 3 years, it's amazing. Unfortunately, not a lot of companies can do that and are willing to do that. And I think you also, like, as a woman, you have to be honest with yourself and realize that if you take 3 years off work, again, as I said, you're going to lose a lot of skills. And it is absolutely normal because the world is evolving so fast, everything is changing so fast. Like, 3 years ago, we weren't talking about ChatGPT. Now everyone is talking about ChatGPT, AI. So if you want to still continue doing your job in 3 years, you just constantly have to work on your skills, maybe take courses while having a baby. And I think it's possible. As long as you have this will, you will find a way.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. As long, I'm guessing it probably does lead to some discrimination with interviews or people thinking about who to promote into more senior roles. Because if you're trying to fill a vacancy for a job and there's a man who's 30 and there's a woman who's 30,
Yes.
I'm sure
Unfortunately,
they
I think
probably,
so.
yeah, I think it happens all over the world, and maybe they don't ask them in the interview. Are you single? Are you married? Do you have children? Are you planning on having
Sometimes they
children?
do.
Yeah, one of my students she's from Russia, but she lives in Germany, and she is 30 something, and she was trying to get a job as a dentist, and they directly asked her, "Are you planning on having children anytime soon?"
Yeah, and it's like, okay, it's really weird because if I am, I mean, unfortunately, that's how many companies work. And for them, it's like, okay, if you want to work for us, we got to make sure you stay on top of everything. Like, we can't allow for you to get pregnant and have kids. Absolutely not. But it's just like, wow, okay, well, then I don't want to work for this company.
Yeah, well, the funny thing about my student was that she was quite upset that she was getting asked these questions and she thought it was discrimination. But then also told me that she was planning on getting a job and getting pregnant as soon as possible. So,
um, But I mean, I think at like many jobs that we do, women can get pregnant and then they can work through the whole pregnancy. And then they
mm,
don't actually, like, a lot of women, they are fine, like working immediately after giving birth, let's say, or working. I know some women who are like, for example, my mom is actually a very good example because a day before she gave birth to me, she was passing one of her exams in college because she gave birth to me when she was very, very young. And her whole pregnancy, she was in school. She was studying. She wasn't like, okay, I'm pregnant. That's it. Like, I can't do anything. No, she was studying. She was taking exams. She was passing those exams. And a day before she gave birth to me, like, one of her professors in college, he was like, you have to go home. Like, you're too pregnant to be here. And she's
mm.
like, I'm fine. I feel fine.
Yep, next day you popped out.
Yep, exactly. So, and then she continued working. I'm like, okay, mom.
That's amazing. So, so you joined school at 5, 6, 7, 6, 7, 8,
Yep.
and what is the kind of the ordinary school path until you get to the age of 18?
hmm So this is actually very interesting because it's something that is different. Like, there is a big difference between Russia and the United States, at least. Something that I talked about with my boyfriend because he's from the States. And in Russia, a lot of people usually go to the very same school from elementary to high school. It's just one building. one building, you see the same people, the same teachers, the same classrooms. So that's why a lot of people get very attached. And that's why a lot of people, like once they finish high school, they want to come back. They want to, talk to their teachers one more time because they really miss them. And I would say the only reason why you would switch schools is because maybe you don't like it or maybe you're moved. And that's what happened to me because I went to elementary school in the north of Russia. The city is called Monchegorsk. And then we moved to Lipetsk, which was my hometown. And yeah, basically, elementary school is from grade 1 to grade 4. Then middle school is grade 5 to grade 8. And high school is grade 9 to grade 11. In Russia, in total, it's 11. In the United States, it's 12. So that's also a big difference. And a big difference is that in the States, usually you switch schools completely. Like it's a completely different building, maybe in a different neighborhood. So everything is changing. And that's why probably we see like a lot of drama in those American movies about high schoolers, like, oh my God, I'm freshman, I'm changing my school, like I want to be cool. We don't have anything like that in Russia. Like you're still going to the exact same school with the exact same people. So that's why a lot of people build very lasting friendships and connections.
Wow, yeah. I went to three different well, actually before I went to university, I went to four different institutions. So I went to an infant school, which is year 1 and year 2, I think. Yeah, that's right. And that's from like 5 till 7, I guess. But most people do infant school and primary school in the same place. It's just mine are basically the same school because they're next door to each other, but they've separated them for some reason. And then you go to primary school from up until the age of 10, and you do 4 years there. So you go up until year 6, and then that's when you join big school, which is secondary school.
Big
And
school. I like the
yeah, that
name.
I know it's like a frightening kind of point in your kind of development as a kid because you have to choose which secondary school or big school that you go to. So usually you have to choose one depending on the kind of location that you live in. So it's called a catchment area, and you'll be eligible for a few certain schools, and you have to apply. And I remember going around and looking at the schools, but I was always going to go to the school that I went to because most of my class and friends were going there, so it made complete sense. I didn't have a older sibling, so a lot of the time the younger sibling just goes to the school that the younger sibling goes to the school that the older sibling went to. But I'm the oldest in my family, so that's not the case. But yeah, I don't think there's too much difference really between the schools, especially kind of the normal state schools. One of them actually focused more on sport, and I didn't go to that one, even though I was primarily focused on sport as a kid, and that was like my main hobby. But I went to the other one because all my friends were going. And then you do that from age 11 till 16. Then some schools, they have like a college inside them. So I'm guessing some people probably do stay in the same building or school for a long period of their education, but me, it was quite different. And it's the same for a lot of people as well. And then you go to a college, which is 16 to 18, and that's usually 2 years.
Okay, got it. Wow, this is very interesting. So, usually, like, how old are students when they go to university?
18, but we call
18.
we call like college like 2 years before. In America, they call university college, but we
Yeah.
have college, which is kind of still further education. So it is compulsory now, but it was only made compulsory a few years ago. So previously, you could finish secondary school at 16. You do your GCSEs, your exams, and then after you do that, you're 16, you're finished, you could get a job straight away. But now you actually do have to go to further education until you're 18, and then you decide if you want to go to university or not at 18.
Oh, wow. We actually have something very similar in Russia because so after grade like year 9, I guess that's when you're probably 16 years old, you can finish school. Like that's it. You can finish school and you can start working, or you can continue your education. You can go to high school and basically then finish high school and then go to university. Or when you're 16, you can go to college. We also call it college in Russia. And it's a little bit different. Yes. So you can, I think you spend around 2 or 3 years there, and it is different from a regular university. So it's cool. I didn't know about that. So I guess it's kind of similar, but I guess there are some things that are different, but at least we call it the same thing.
And do you have like different types of schools in Russia for your secondary school? Because in the UK, you can go to a state school, which is free, and then you have a private school. It's sometimes called a public school as well, which is weird because public usually means like lots of people are there, but it's free to go there, like a public park or a public swimming pool, for example. But yeah, they're the same thing, I think, public and private schools, and these are really expensive. And if you've watched programs like The Crown or Downton Abbey, and you're thinking about old England and kind of really rich people, this is where they go for their education. And there's one actually really close to my house, and I think it's £26,000 per term, and I think there's
Wow.
2 or 3 terms. So yeah, you're looking at tens and tens of thousands of pounds per year, and you can go there from, I think, primary school you can start, but you can definitely go in secondary school, and you can definitely go for your college experience, 16 to 18. But yeah, you have to usually be very wealthy to go to those schools, or there are kind of scholarships. And if you're really good at a sport, or you're really good at music, for example, I'm guessing maybe other things like drama as well. Maybe you can get in for free, or maybe you can pay reduced fees. But yeah, usually it's for the upper classes of England to go there. And then we have a thing called grammar schools, which are for people when you are 11 years old, or 10 or 11, and you're deciding to go to secondary school. You can do a test. I don't know if it's the same thing, but I think it's called the 11s or something like this, and you do a test, and if you're kind of academically gifted enough, so if you're smart enough, you can be eligible to go to one of these special schools where kind of just the smarter people go, and usually they are usually a bit posher than state schools, even though working class students could go there as well, because it's just purely based on academic results, but usually they are posher. So state school is the ordinary level. This is where most people go. This is where I went. Then it's probably grammar school. Then it's definitely private school in terms of poshness.
Okay. Are boarding schools popular? Because I feel like that's something that kind of I have this like perception that a lot of people in the UK go to boarding schools, at least because of like TV series.
Yeah, so boarding schools are only kind of the private schools. So no
Got
state
it.
schools, I think, are boarding. It's only the private schools. So the school that's right next to my parents' house, Shrewsbury School, you can definitely board there. And people internationally send their kids there as well. So I'm sure there's loads of students there from different countries, and their parents are like, okay, I'll see you in 3 months. You're staying in England by yourself.
Actually, I just thought about this cool question to ask you. If money were not a question, would you send your kid to a boarding school?
I sometimes walk through the boarding school or private school.
Both. Let's talk about all of them, like private school, like everything that requires a lot of money, or you would still choose a state school.
I wouldn't send them to boarding school because I think it's nice to have like a closer relationship with your children, and I feel like it's for I feel like a lot of people might just have like a really busy work life, and they kind of really want to focus on that rather than the actual growing of a family, or having like a close connection with a family. I'm sure there are plenty of examples where this is not
Mm-hmm.
the case, but I don't think there's a need for like a 12-year-old to live by themselves.
Yeah.
You're going to do that when for the rest of your life, especially at university. I feel like that's a great time to do that. So I wouldn't send them to boarding school. Private school, it'd be really difficult not to if you had excess money, because the results, the actual education they get will be so much better in terms of just the pure quality of class sizes are so much smaller. Usually class sizes in the UK are around like 30, like 25 to 30, I would say,
Yeah, same thing
in
in
most
Russia.
places. And I'm sure if you go to a private school, it's probably like 15 or floating around that number, more or less. And the quality of their education is going to be a lot better, and the results they get, so they have more opportunities in the future. But you will be ingraining them into a culture of being surrounded by people and families who are maybe out of touch with reality for most people in England. And you if you like witness a conversation between someone who went to a state school and a private school and they're kind of like 16 years old, it'd be completely different and their kind of experiences would be completely different. And because I didn't go to a private school, I don't think I'd want my child to go there too, because I'd want them to have like a similar upbringing to me. And I went to a very good state school actually, so I was quite lucky. There are some awful ones, and it's not the fault of the teachers, it's just the fault of like funding and other
Hmm.
problems. But yeah, it'd be very difficult. I think I'd probably still end up sending them to private school just because it will open so many doors for them in the future. But I'd have to try and keep them grounded to reality. Like, this is not normal, and you can't treat people who are a lower class than you any differently than you would with these people.
Exactly. Yeah. It's interesting because I think in the States, for example, if you want to go to a very good state school, I think in the States they're called public schools, like schools that are free, they're called public schools. So if you want to go to a good public school, usually parents, they have to like buy a house in a very nice neighborhood because it is dependent on where you live, on your zip code. And that's why if, for example, in the States, there are a lot of very good state schools, public schools, like you don't have to pay a lot of money, but you have to pay a lot of money to live in this neighborhood because usually,
Yep.
the houses in this neighborhood, they cost a lot of money. So yes, you might not go to a private school per se, but your parents probably had to pay a lot of money to live in this neighborhood. Is it the same thing in the UK?
Yeah, I'm sure it probably, the where I live is like a very middle class town, and I'm sure some of the schools here on average are probably better than some of the ones in kind of poorer areas, for example. So yeah, to get your like children into a nicer school, perhaps. The thing is, with the funding in the UK, the better your school is doing academically, the less money it gets given. So I don't
What?
yeah, I know.
Why?
So
This is so strange.
the school that yeah, you think that you get rewarded by more money, but kind of
Exactly.
the schools that are getting worse academic results, they see. I think it's this way because my school's equipment was just awful, so bad. Like, the sports equipment was so, we didn't even have a pitch that we could play football on. We had to go to like the school opposite for our football matches against other schools. So yeah, I don't know why, but we had really good academic results and good like when we had like this thing called Ofsted, where it's like an independent body and they come around the school and they rate the school like good, very bad, bad, like excellent, and my school got excellent quite a few times, so it was like really high up there on the state schools in terms of the results it was getting. So like it was just getting no money in terms of funding, which sucked, but at least we were getting good quality teaching, I guess. But I can't remember your original question.
Okay. No, I think I forgot it too. No worries.
Yeah.
But I wanted to say that it is very different in Russia, and I think the States too. Like, if the quality of education in that school is good, the school is going to receive a lot of funding, especially if the school is located, again, in a nice neighborhood, in a big city. So, for example, I know that in Moscow, in Russia, the capital of Russia, there are a lot of schools where you can, like, if, for example, you're very good at math, you're going to have a lot more math lessons, like math classes. You're going to have the best teachers who are going to teach you everything about it. So that definitely happens. I think in the regions of Russia, the situation is a little bit different, and I have experienced that because I went to school in Lipetsk, which is a town. It's not anything too crazy. So for us, we actually had to pay, like my parents had to pay for a lot of things. So it's gonna sound so weird, but usually in Russia, a lot of parents have to pay for, I don't know, to change curtains in the whole school, or to buy new equipment in the whole school, or to clean the whole school. Parents have to pay for that. So that's also something that, like, a lot of people obviously don't like. And you have to spend, because in Russia you have to pay for your uniform, because every single person has to wear a uniform, or at least most schools, like 99% of schools in Russia require you to wear uniform. Then you have to pay for all your textbooks, everything, like all of that. Then parents also have to pay for like all of those cleaning stuff, and it adds up. And for a lot of people, it's a lot of money that they cannot afford to pay. And that is something that I never understood and I never liked about the education system, because like, why do my parents have to pay for the curtains to be changed? Or another thing that we have that is also cool, cool, like it's not cool actually. Um, in the summer when we don't have lessons, students have to come in and clean the schoolyard. At least that was my experience.
What?
Yes,
That's
exactly. It
crazy.
was in the summer, like the first month when you don't have classes, it's a requirement for you to continue studying at that school. You need to come in, they give you a shovel, they give you all the equipment, and you just clean the leaves, you know?
Hmm.
And I was like, okay. And I had to do it. My sister had to do it because she went to the exact same school. My brother is not studying there right now, but that was a very interesting experience for us.
Did you go on any school trips when you were in school?
Yes, actually, one thing about my school that I really really liked. Unfortunately, my sister didn't have the same experience, but I had a very great experience in terms of trips. We went on a lot of different trips, and in 2012, I was 12 years old. We went to Europe with my English teacher, with my French teacher, like from my school, and there were like a few more teachers too. It was like a whole group. We were touring Europe on a bus. It was challenging, sometimes physically challenging, but I was 12, so I did not care. And also, that was my first time. Well, not first time, but like it was definitely a big trip for me without my parents, because I went there without my parents. My parents stayed home. It was like possible for your parents to come with you. Some kids, they went with their parents, but my parents were like, "You're gonna be fine." And I actually really liked that they gave me a choice to go there by myself. I mean, with like a group with my teachers, instead of being like, no, you can only go with us. So it was nice because I got to visit a lot of European countries. And that was actually my first and only time that I was in Europe. So I visited Italy, Spain, France, Germany, the Czech Republic, Belarus, Ukraine. Um, I think Monaco too.
Wow.
So yeah, a lot of different countries. It was amazing. It was like I still, when I like can find the pictures. Unfortunately, I didn't take a lot of pictures there, and I feel so sad. I mean, I was only 12. Like, what did you expect? But right now, like every time I think about that trip, I'm like, it was a nice trip. Like I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. What about you? Did you go on a lot of school trips?
We went on the first one in year six, so we were probably 10 years old, and we went to a village in Wales called Broadhaven. I just looked how far away it was. I think it's like 4 hours from our school or from here. And where else? In year eight, so when you're like 12 or 13, you had the opportunity to go to La Rochelle in France, but I didn't go for some reason. I don't actually know why I went. I didn't go. But then I went to another place, I think it's in Wales, called Arthog. It's like an adventure camp place where you could do like extreme sports. And I ended up going there twice more because I chose PE as one of my kind of specialist subjects to get tested in or have an exam in when I was
Okay.
16. So I got judged on two of the activities you could do there, which was rock climbing and mountain biking. So
Whoa, that
yeah, that
sounds
was pretty cool.
challenging.
Yeah, yeah, it is not as difficult as you think
Okay.
as it sounds. But yeah, you could also do a French exchange, which I didn't do, but I did go to Paris in year 11, so I would have been 16. Definitely not old enough, but I remember some of my friends. I didn't do this, unfortunately, but some of my friends, when we had some free time, they went to like a bar and got served some beers, and they thought they were
Yep.
so cool because they were able
It
to
was the
drink
same
drink
thing for
beers
me. I was only
underage.
12, but there were some, like, obviously kids with us who were a lot older, like also in high school.
Yep.
So I didn't drink anything because honestly, I was scared. I was very scared because it was like, oh, this is what it's actually like. Like kids go on trips and they get super drunk. And I was like, no, like I don't even like I didn't even like alcohol at that time. I was like, no, like I want to do it. But yeah, a lot of kids, that was basically their whole like European experience in high school, like who went with us. They were just so drunk every single day. And
Yeah,
the
that's great.
teachers kind of noticed that, but I think I don't know, they knew they were drinking, but I don't know why they didn't do anything about that.
Yeah, and in year 11, so 16, some of like the business school or like the people doing business were able to go to New York, which would have been great, but I
Wow.
didn't get to go there. But when I went to sixth form, which is a type of college, so there are two types of college you can go to. Essentially, one is sixth form where you do A levels, which is kind of more academic. So you can do I did politics, history, geography, and there's a vocational college where you can do kind of more learn more trades like plumbing, carpentry, sports science, things like this. But
Okay.
when I went to sixth form, during my politics class or module, I was able to go to Washington D.C. when I was like,
Wow.
I think I was 18 years old. Yeah, I would have been 18 years old. I definitely was because we bought some cigarettes there because you can't buy alcohol at 18 years old in America. So we were used to drinking. So like a week without drinking was like, oh my god, what are we gonna do? So we all bought too many cigarettes and we thought it was really cool because they in the UK like the cigarette packaging is really limited. Like there's no marketing or advertising, so the packs all look the same. But in America they don't have that, so we're kind of just like trying to find the coolest looking packets of cigarettes and send pictures of like them to back home to our friends. But
Oh
that
my
that was
God.
that was a great trip. That I have some really good memories of them of going to Washington DC, and that was my first time in America. So that was really fun.
Nice. It reminds me of when I went to also New York City in 2020 and at the beginning of 2020. And I was only 20 years old and I also couldn't buy alcohol. And it was just so interesting for me because, again, in Russia, you can start buying alcohol from the age of 18. And I was already so used to that. And I came to New York City and I was like, oh, I'm still underage here, like in terms of alcohol. So that's interesting. It's definitely a different experience.
Yeah, they can drive at 16, I think, and then they
Yeah.
can't drink until they're 21.
Well, I would say it is good, that like, I don't know, to be honest, like that's a different topic and I haven't thought about it for a very long time. Like if it's better if you can like start drinking, like start, I would say buying alcohol legally from the age of 18 or 21. I don't know. I definitely need to research this topic a little bit more. But I know that a lot of kids in the United States, they start driving at 16 and obviously they already drink. And that is a big problem. And that is very dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. In the UK, you can't drink until you can't buy alcohol until you're 18, but a lot of people do start drinking. I remember I would have been in the summer between year 8 and year 9, so 13 or 14. I went to like someone's party, and we were staying there the night. Like he had like a tent in his garden and stuff, and I asked my mum to buy some beers. I don't think I think she actually said no at this stage, but there was loads of alcohol there because people had older brothers and sisters, so they bought it. And my mum dropped me off to the party, and she was horrified because she realized girls were at the party as well, and she knew that the girls would be staying. And she's like, "Oh no!" And she told me off big time the next day. But yeah, my parents would buy me alcohol, and this is very normal. From like 15 onwards, I think. And you
Hmm.
go to a house party and you have like four little cute bottles of beer. Um, yeah, that's really normal. And if your parents don't do that, then you usually have to ask someone who's older than you. So you might know someone at school older than you, or if you have an older brother or sister, or if you really have to resort to it, you just have to stand outside of a shop and ask an adult, "Excuse me, can you go into that shop for me and buy me some cigarettes or alcohol?" Which I would always say no now because it's not worth the risk, and I don't want to buy some
No.
15-year-olds alcohol.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. I would not do that for sure. I wanted to ask you, how did you spend your summer holidays as a kid?
Yeah, so I know in Russia you have like 3 months off, don't you? Is that right?
Exactly. Yep. June, July, and August. We have 3 months off, and usually you're just going all out. You go to if you have like grandparents and they live in the countryside, that's where you go. And that was my experience, like a very, I would say, traditional Russian experience. My grandparents, they still live in the village, so I would always go there. I would spend time with them, probably like for the duration of all of these 3 months. And I would go to like a nearby forest. I would go swim in the river. I would go like hug some birch trees, which are very traditional in Russia. But that was basically my childhood. And I think when I was in elementary school and in middle school, I really liked that. Like, especially in elementary school, I love the fact that I could be outside, I could run around, I could get dirty, I could like swim in the river every time I wanted to. It was a very shallow river, so like nothing too crazy. You can actually like swim in that river, you know. It's like not and it was also, the water there was extremely cold. So the thing that I really loved about that river though was that there were beavers there, and sometimes I could see them, and I would just like sit there and look at them, how they were building like their little house. That was amazing. Like, I really love the fact that I could live very close to nature. I could look at birds, and sometimes my dad would tell me, like, oh, this flower is called this way, like this flower. I still remember because there was one flower that was called Veronica or something like that, or like Veronica's eyes. I don't remember exactly, but Veronica is my name. So I was always like, oh, this flower is called just like me. And I was like, I'm laying like down in Veronica, something like that. So I really enjoyed that. But of course, growing up, like middle school, high school, I I stopped liking that because I wanted to be a city girl. I wanted to spend more time in the city, like meet up with my friends or like study, prepare for exams. When I was in high school, it was a very stressful time for me because I wanted to like go to university. But of course, a lot of families in Russia also go on vacation in the summer because that's when kids don't have to go to school. So a lot of people, if you can afford that, they go to a lot of different countries like Europe, the States, everywhere. Usually, most people either go somewhere in Russia to the beach, or you go to Turkey. So Turkey was always a very popular destination. I would say Turkey and Egypt, these two countries. That's where people go to a lot. Yeah, and my family and I would always go somewhere in Russia because my parents never really liked flying. So I feel like only when I started like making my own money, I could fly wherever I want to. Like my first flight was when I was 19 years old. And then when I was 20, I went to New York City. So that was my first long flight, like transatlantic international flight. I was extremely excited. I was so excited. I was not afraid at all. Now, I don't know why I feel a little bit afraid of flying, but back then I was just like, yes, let's do it. That's amazing. So that was my experience.
Yeah, that sounds like especially really nice for like a younger child. But I can understand you getting a bit older, especially a teenager, and thinking, "Oh, I'm too cool for the grandparents now."
Exactly. I'm too cool for the beavers. What are you
Yeah,
saying?
yeah,
Yeah, I don't
exactly.
want to go there.
Yeah, school holidays in the UK are 6 weeks in state school, so definitely not as long
What?
as. Yeah, it's always around the 19th of December because that's my sister's birthday, and we'd always try and go on holiday. Holidays get so much more expensive if you're going in the kids' school term. So my parents would always try and like do the week before or something, or like they'd try and leave around my sister's birthday, and that's when school was breaking up. And then we're back on, I think it's the 1st of September as well, or around them. So yeah, my parents had to work, and like most parents do, so they have to find places for me to go. And my mum was lucky enough to be able to finish at like 2 o'clock every day, so we didn't have to like stay anywhere really late. I'm sure
Hmm.
most people finish work at 5, but my mum worked part time, which was nice. But yeah, I would go to. I think we'd go on holiday for 2 weeks every summer, and we'd go to Spain a lot of the time. So we went to most. Sometimes we went to the south of France, and then kind of the holidays were getting better and better and better because my parents were earning more money, so we started going to
It was the
Spain, and we
same
went
thing for
to.
me too.
Yeah, we started going to Majorca and Menorca, and we went there. I've been there like 7 times, I think, the shared islands there. And then, yeah, we started going to other places a bit later. But
Nice.
we'd go for holiday for 2 weeks. I'd probably go to a football camp for a week where it'd just be somewhere in Shrewsbury, my hometown, and there would be a football camp where loads of kids my age and older and younger would go, and you get put into a group and you just play football all day essentially, which is great for me. And then maybe I'd do like another sports one where it's not just football, but you just do sports all day. I really didn't like going to those places because I just felt like so alone and like
Mm,
isolated from all the people there, because it takes me a while to like, I was quite a shy kid, and it took me a while to kind of like break into friendship groups, and like you'd go there and it felt like everyone was already friends, and like I'd feel like really sad when my mum had left and stuff. I was just really excited to go back home. But yeah, before I go to get too deep on that, yeah, and then I'd probably stay at my grandparents occasionally for the day, but my mum would like have the mission of finding places to put me and my sister for the week. So like one day I might be at my grandparents, I might be at my other grandparents, I might be at like one of my friends' houses, and so on and so on and so on. So you're just doing a mixture of things, I guess. But
mm-hmm.
then when I was old enough to um like not need looking after, I think I'd just play out with my friends all day. So I was really into BMXing at one stage, and just I'd always like,
Nice.
when I was like 11 years, when I was probably, yeah, 10 or 11 years old, I'd start to like go out, essentially, where like I don't need my parents, I'd go out with my friends. We'd go on our scooters, our bikes, and we'd go to like the local skate park. There'd be like a cage where you can play football in, and like some like bike jumps, like some dirt jumps, or some like metal, like a skate park. And we just hang out there if there was no like older kids there, when we'd be too scared to go there, which was often the case. Sometimes we'd turn up. I walked down there the other day, like the path that we'd go down, and there's like a bush, and you could like, pop your head round, and you could see the skate park and the football cage, and you'd be like, nope, there's teenagers there, like we need to leave. And we'd be too scared. And it's really funny, because if I saw like kids there that age now, it wouldn't bother me whatsoever. But it's
Of
just
course not.
perspective, isn't it? Like, I thought they were really old and scary, but clearly from my age now of 28, they're probably not. But yeah, so yeah, I'd just hang out with my friends all day. We'd go BMXing. We'd just cause trouble, I guess.
Yeah, it's funny because like the experience of interacting with teenagers, I also have a very interesting story to share because as a kid, from the age of 4 up until 12, 13, I did gymnastics. The rhythmic gymnastics is called. You can look it up. And the Russian team is very, very strong in terms of like how we train and everything like that. I would say I got so many traumas from doing gymnastics. Unfortunately, so many things that I had to work on and have to work on right now. But anyway, when I was probably like around 9, 10, 11, 12, I would go to gymnastics camps in the summer. So those things were extremely ruthless. We would have 2 training sessions every single day. And it was usually like in some kind of forest. So it was nice. Like the air there, the air quality was amazing. We were in the shade. So it was nice. Like in the morning, we would have like a little training session. In the evening, we would do the exact same thing, but at night, we would have little parties where like people would dance to the music and also slow dance. And of course, there were boys because it was not just for like gymnastics, but also sometimes there would be like boys who do swimming, everything connected to sports. It was like a sports camp, swimming or soccer. So obviously I would try to like dress up nicely, and but I was still like, I don't know, 10, 11. And of course there were like teenage girls who did gymnastics with me, and they were always winning because they were older than me. And I always wanted to like spend time with them because I thought it was cool. They were cool, and because they were cool, I wanted to be cool too. So like remembering those things is just so funny. And sometimes when like I wanted to like slow dance with some boy and he would choose me, it's also like as girls we would just stand and not do anything, and then we would expect a guy to come up with like to us and be like, do you want to slow dance with me? Oh, just remembering some things, it's like it's funny, but at the same time, there were many things that I loved about those camps because that's when I could just focus on gymnastics and not worry about studying because I didn't have to study at all, like nothing. Yeah, so in a way, it was nice because we would also go to different like cities and even countries to attend these gymnastics camps. And I remember when I went to one, I don't remember where it was exactly, but That one was especially like ruthless and serious and crazy because we would also train with new coaches. Like people were completely different. Everything was different, like new girls, new coaches. And in a way, it was difficult. It was definitely more challenging because everything was super new. And also, the thing that I did not like at all about gymnastics is everything connected to food, dieting. They would always restrict us. That's why when I quit gymnastics and I was in high school, I had an eating disorder, and that's a completely different story we can talk about later. But that's something that happened because of gymnastics for sure, because they would always tell us that we were not thin enough, not skinny enough, even though we were so skinny. Like now, when I look at my photos when I was doing gymnastics, I'm like, what? And that's crazy. I was extremely skinny, like probably not even like healthy skinny, you know? But yeah, that was probably like my experience in terms of going to a sports camp.
So do you have to be like a minimum standard to go there? Because that sounds way more serious than my football camps. Because anyone, you don't even like. I remember occasionally I would see one of my friends like at the camp, and I'd be like, "Oh, it's Ben," and I don't think Ben even liked football that much, but his mum
No.
obviously needed to find a place to put him for the week or whatever, so she would send him to a football camp. So anyone could go, and you'd get split up into ages and abilities, but it wasn't like serious or ruthless like that sounds.
hmm No, it was very serious because we would go like with our kind of team, with our gymnastics team, and like with my coach. So it wasn't like everyone who liked gymnastics. No, it was everyone who wanted to compete, everyone who is extremely serious. Some of them I would say were less serious because we didn't have competitions, but during some of them we would also have competitions too, like at the end of the camp. Or maybe not competitions, but like at least some kind of performances to see like how you progressed, like what you did. And sometimes you could even, I'm not sure how to say it and like how to describe it, but like you could even get like a higher level. Like in sports, you can reach certain levels in terms of your expertise and what you can do. So during those like sports camps, you could even like prove to the judges that you deserve that higher level and they could give it to you.
Wow, yeah, we don't have I guess that is in gymnastics because you can get like assessed on certain like maneuvers or whatever, but I guess you don't have that
Exactly.
in football.
hmm Yeah, football is a team sport. It's completely different. Yeah.
So were you all in on gymnastics when you were younger? Was that kind of your main hobby?
Yes, when I was younger, it was my main hobby. It was the main thing that I did. However, I would say that my parents would always tell me that studying education is extremely important. So I was not that kid who just like only did gymnastics. No, for me, education was always like my top priority. If I didn't have enough time to do homework, I wouldn't go to gymnastics. So that's why probably like I kind of knew that I didn't want to like do gymnastics professionally and like continue doing it in like high school too. Cause, once you start doing it, if like you're very serious about it, that's your whole life. And I would say I was thinking about it for a very long time because for me, gymnastics is like, I don't know, like if I have a girl and she tells me, Mom, I want to do gymnastics, like I want to do rhythmic gymnastics, exactly what you did. I love the sport. I'm not gonna say no because she wants to do that. Okay, she can do that, but I'm gonna make sure that she has like a good sports psychologist or something like that because that thing really like does crazy stuff to your brain, and obviously like competing and trying to always be the best, and obviously like all of those things in terms of weight and your body image. Yeah. So I would not intentionally put my kid into gymnastics, but if she comes to me and she's like, I want to do it. Oh, okay, you can do it, but I'm going to make sure that you're as healthy as possible.
Yeah, those individual sports seem like a lot of pressure on young people, and football. Adults take football really seriously in the UK. So when I used to play Sunday league, which is you join a team and you play every Sunday, like the adults would get pretty serious on the sideline sometimes and like shouting, swearing at the referee. It was yeah. You look back on it and you think, why did you take that seriously? Like it's a bunch of 13-year-olds playing football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think in Russia, it's like girls take it seriously, like who do gymnastics. Maybe some parents do too, but my parents were never like too strict. Like they were never like, no, you have to do gymnastics. When I was like 13, I told them that I don't want to do gymnastics anymore. They said, okay, but you still have to do a sport. You still have to do active. So, like, choose whatever it is you want to, but just make sure you're active. So, I started doing track. That was also very like individual and but it was different. It was different because I didn't have those problems with like body image and that I was not skinny enough. Fortunately for me, that was a different experience, but I was very weak when I started doing track compared to all the other people who were like who had a lot more muscle, especially in their legs, were stronger, and I was like, I didn't even know how to run.
That's quite fun. I would have thought you'd have quite a lot of muscle because when I see professional gymnasts now, they look ridiculously good.
Well, maybe you're thinking about a different kind of gymnastics,
Hmm.
like artistic gymnastics that involves like, you
Yeah,
jump really
like
crazy.
yeah,
Yeah,
or the like
those.
the hoops.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those things, of course, like you have to be very strong. I would say rhythmic gymnastics. Well, right now it's only a women's sport. Like I would say, like in terms of Olympic Games, I'm not quite sure, but when I did it, it was female only sport. So it's like a performance. You kind of dance, but you do a lot of very challenging things. And usually you have to be skinny, have long legs, be extremely flexible, so at least when I did gymnastics, those were the things that people valued.
Is it that thing where there's like a huge mat and they do like a performance and they do like flips and cartwheels and stuff like that?
It is still artistic gymnastics.
Okay,
So
yeah.
we perform on a carpet. It is not a mat, so it's a
Mm.
carpet. And you do flips, kinda. They're not really flips, but like you do splits. Let's say you do splits. It's more like a dance. If you Google it, you'll see like rhythmic gymnastics Olympic
Yeah.
Games, for example. Like you will see a clear difference between, because in the States, for example, artistic gymnastics is very, very popular. Like Simone Biles, that's what
Hmm.
she does. And
Ah,
their team is very strong in terms of artistic gymnastics, but the Russian team is very strong in terms of rhythmic gymnastics.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, wow. Well, even though the UK and Russia have very different dating cultures, it seems like the education system and childhood isn't too significantly different apart from you get way longer off for your summer holidays.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we have a lot of similarities for sure.
Okay, anything else you want to add, Veronica?
No, I think that's it. I think it was a very nice conversation. I think people who listen to us or watch this episode, they learned a lot of new things. So if you want to share something with us, make sure to leave us a comment, maybe something interesting in your home country or your childhood experience. We will be very happy to read it.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you everyone for listening, and thank you, Veronica.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Bridging Borders. If you enjoyed the conversation, be sure to subscribe to the podcast for more useful insights.
Stay connected by following us on social media. You can find us at bridging_borders_podcast. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep connecting.